Breaking tonight, the Gordie Howe Bridge crisis just revealed something far bigger than a trade dispute. Canada didn't panic. Canada played chess. Tensions are escalating between Ottawa and Washington again. Trump erupted on social media, threatening to block the completion of a 2.5-kilometer international bridge that Canada paid for entirely. But instead of firing back, Prime Minister Mark Carney picked up the phone, had what he called a positive conversation, and quietly activated the most powerful weapon in Canada's new diplomatic arsenal: American domestic politics. Everyone believed Trump's threat would force Ottawa into a defensive crouch. Markets expected construction delays. Analysts assumed Canada would offer concessions to keep the project alive. Pundits predicted another chapter of Canadian capitulation. They were all utterly incorrect. Ottawa, February 2026. Standing before reporters after the call with Trump, Carney delivered a masterclass in strategic restraint. He explained calmly that Canada financed the entire bridge, that Michigan owns part of it, that U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra, a Michigander himself, would play a role in smoothing the conversation in and around the bridge. Then he told reporters he informed the president that Canada's women's hockey team would beat the Americans in their Olympic matchup that day. "It's a big game today and we're going to win." Translation: Ottawa just told Washington that Canada won't be bullied. Not with anger, not with threats, with facts, leverage, and a smile. And what happened next? The strategy that Carney deployed reveals exactly why Canada's diplomatic posture is shifting from reactive to surgical, and why the Michigan connection is the most underestimated card in Ottawa's hand. Dear viewers, let's be absolutely clear about what's unfolding here. This isn't just about a bridge. This is about the fundamental architecture of how Canada navigates the Trump era. And the blueprint Carney just laid out is unlike anything we've seen from Ottawa in decades. Here's the context most people are missing. The Gordie Howe International Bridge will connect Highway 401 on the Canadian side directly to Interstate 75 in Michigan. No congestion, no bottlenecks, an uninterrupted artery for people and goods flowing between two of North America's most critical economic corridors. Canada paid for the whole thing, every dollar, every beam, every lane. The United States contributed zero financial assistance to this project, and yet Trump threatened to block it. Now here's where Carney's approach becomes genuinely brilliant. A different prime minister might have gone to the podium and raged, might have threatened retaliation, might have turned this into another chapter in the endless cycle of cross-border escalation that Trump thrives on. Carney did none of that. Instead, he activated Michigan. According to Ontario government data, the Gordie Howe Bridge project has supported 12,670 jobs in Michigan alone. More than 8,800 American laborers and tradespeople have worked on U.S. components of this bridge. These aren't Canadian workers. These are American workers in American communities earning American paychecks because Canada invested in their economy. Think about that for a moment. Canada built something that employs nearly 13,000 Americans, and the President of the United States is threatening to shut it down. Who does that hurt? Not Ottawa. It hurts Detroit. It hurts Windsor's twin city across the river. It hurts the very voters Trump claims to champion. This is the Michigan line, and Carney understands it perfectly. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, not exactly known for diplomatic subtlety, was remarkably calm about the whole thing. "Make no mistake about it," Ford told reporters, "I'm very confident the bridge is going to open." Why the confidence? Because Ford understands the same thing Carney understands. The bridge opens because it's in the best interest of the American economy. Not just the Canadian economy, the American economy. And the people who know this best aren't in the White House. They're in Lansing. They're in Detroit. They're the Michigan politicians who publicly condemn Trump's remarks while voicing full-throated support for the bridge. Ford even pointed out the obvious contradiction. If President Trump didn't want it to go forward, why did he fast-track it? The premier is right. In 2017, Trump himself stood beside then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and said in a joint statement, "We look forward to the expeditious completion of the Gordie Howe International Bridge, which will serve as a vital economic link between our two countries." That's Trump's own words, his own statement, his own signature on the fast-track approval. And now he wants to pretend none of that happened. But here's where the story gets darker, and where Carney's strategic patience becomes even more critical. Trump's trade representative, Jamieson Greer, went on Fox Business and said the quiet part out loud. He suggested the Americans want a cut of Canada's toll revenue. Revenue that Canada is collecting specifically to recoup the billions it spent building a bridge that America didn't pay a single cent for. Let that sink in. Canada financed the entire project. Canada took all the financial risk, and now Washington wants a share of the tolls. Greer framed it this way: the U.S. is the main economy, many times bigger than Canada, and it should be compensated for allowing goods to be sold into its territory. Compensated for allowing commerce, as though trade is a favor America grants to lesser nations, rather than a mutually beneficial exchange that enriches both sides. This is the rhetoric Canada is dealing with, and this is exactly why Carney's approach, calm, factual, strategically grounded in domestic American politics, is so effective. You don't win an argument with someone who thinks they're doing you a favor by trading with you. You win by making sure the people around them understand what's actually at stake. And in Michigan, they understand. Former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder, a Republican, published an op-ed in the Detroit News that dismantled Trump's position piece by piece. "Canada was wonderful and financed the entire bridge," Snyder wrote. "Michigan and the United States got their half ownership with no investment. That is a great deal." A Republican saying Canada was wonderful in a major Michigan newspaper. That's not an accident. That's the Michigan line working exactly as Carney intended. Now, there's another layer to this that most coverage has completely missed. Greer also mentioned the Ambassador Bridge, the aging, nearly century-old crossing owned privately by the American Moroun family, major Republican donors who spent years and millions of dollars fighting to prevent the Gordie Howe Bridge from being built. Why would a private family spend millions trying to kill a public infrastructure project? Because every day the Gordie Howe Bridge doesn't open, the Ambassador Bridge, their bridge, keeps printing money. As Snyder put it bluntly, if the GHIB is delayed or stopped, there actually is one big winner: the Moroun family and the Ambassador Bridge Company. So when Trump threatens to block the Gordie Howe Bridge, ask yourself, who benefits? Not Michigan workers, not American manufacturers who need faster border crossings, not the supply chain, chains that depend on efficient flow between Ontario and the Midwest. The winner is a billionaire family that has made its fortune exploiting a monopoly on cross-border traffic, while the nearly 100-year-old Ambassador Bridge shows signs of decay. Snyder didn't mince words. Reliance on the Ambassador Bridge has hindered commerce for decades and increased costs for manufacturing operations. The Gordie Howe Bridge solves these problems. It provides faster economic growth on both sides of the border. Carney doesn't need to say any of this himself. He doesn't need to accuse anyone. He just needs to make the phone call, state the facts, and let Michigan's own politicians, Republican politicians, make the case for him. That's the strategy. Don't escalate. Activate the internal actors who already agree with you. Dear viewers, here's the bigger picture that connects all of this. Beyond the bridge, Greer also admitted that early CUSMA negotiations with Canada have not been going well. With the Canadians, it's more challenging, he told Fox Business. There are a variety of issues they haven't addressed, and they aren't addressing. The Americans want more access to Canadian dairy markets. They want the provincial U.S. liquor boycott ended. They want concessions on multiple fronts. But notice the tone. It's not, Canada is cooperating and we're making progress. It's Canada is being difficult. And that difficulty, that refusal to simply comply, is the new posture. It's the same energy Carney brought to the bridge call. Calm, grounded, factual, and absolutely unwilling to fold. Even Greer admitted something revealing when comparing negotiations. The Mexicans are being quite pragmatic right now, he said. Translation: Mexico is giving ground. Canada is not. And this matters enormously. Back in December, Greer laid out a list of demands for CUSMA's review process. More access for U.S. farmers to Canadian dairy markets. An end to provincial liquor boycotts. Structural concessions across multiple sectors. Ottawa heard the demands, reviewed them carefully, and decided that compliance without reciprocity was not an option. The provinces held firm on liquor restrictions. The dairy protections remained intact. Canada came to the table prepared, informed, and unwilling to trade sovereignty for convenience. The bridge situation is a microcosm of this broader reality. Washington assumed that threatening a major infrastructure project would force Ottawa to open concessions elsewhere, on dairy, on digital services, on CUSMA review timelines. Instead, Carney separated the issues, handled the bridge through Michigan's own political channels, and left the trade file exactly where it was. No linkage, no panic, no surrender of leverage on one front to relieve pressure on another. This is the shift. This is the transformation happening in real time. Canada under Carney is not playing the role Washington assigned it. Ottawa isn't the junior partner desperate to preserve access to American markets at any cost. Ottawa is the sovereign nation that built a bridge with its own money, created 13,000 American jobs, and is now calmly reminding everyone, including the president, who actually holds the leverage. The Gordie Howe Bridge isn't just infrastructure, it's a symbol. Canada invested in American communities when America wouldn't invest in itself. And now that investment is the very thing preventing Washington from acting against Canadian interests. Because blocking this bridge means blocking American prosperity. Carney's tone on that call with Trump, positive, measured, confident, wasn't weakness. It was the sound of a leader who knows exactly where his leverage sits. It sits in Michigan. It sits in the 12,670 American jobs. It sits in the Republican politicians defending Canada's project. It sits in the undeniable fact that this bridge was Canada's gift to the American economy, and killing it would be an act of self-sabotage. From reliance to resilience, from reaction to strategy, from hoping Washington would be reasonable to making sure Washington can't afford to be unreasonable. That's Canada's new playbook. And tonight, on that bridge between Windsor and Detroit, you can see exactly how it works. If you're someone who follows North American power dynamics closely, who understands that the real story is never the headline, but the strategy beneath it, this is the channel where we break it down. Every shift, every move, every play Ottawa makes as Canada steps into a new era. Stay sharp, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one.